Ask America.
Welcome to Aaron Ask America, where I ask America the tough questions. Today, I'm extremely excited. I have one of my best friends in the world showing up here on the podcast. We do a show on Twitch together. We've been going for a really long time on Twitch. He's a blessing to me as a person, as a co-host. If you don't know about FireResistant, check out FireResistant on Twitch. But this is a man that is a mentor. I've learned a lot from him, from things that I just never even thought I knew how to learn. But here I am today talking to Fred. And Fred, welcome to not the stream. I'm so used to saying stream. Welcome to the podcast, sir.
Thank you, sir. Glad to be here.
Yeah. So for the people that'll be watching that don't know who you are, the main reason why I'm the most excited about having you on here is because, for one, like I said, you're one of my best friends in the world. I know that we joke on FireResistant and we have a different relationship when the stream is on. So anybody that hangs out with us on the show might actually be interested in seeing how we kind of interact off the show.
Yeah. It's definitely different.
Yeah. So on FireResistant, which we've been doing for what?
8 years.
8 years.
8
now?
years on Twitch and 1 year before when we were just recording it.
Yeah.
So it's been since 2017, I think, is when we actually started.
It's wild.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's wild. It's wild to think, because the other day I was talking to my dad and he was talking about the time that he took you and your wife to go look at a house, and he was like, I think he said that was like 15 years ago. I was like, it was not 15 years ago.
It was 2014.
Yeah.
Or 15.
So 11 years or 10 years ago, but it wasn't 15. He was like, he thought that he met you before I did. I'm like, no, it's like I met him going to church. Like you never went to Cross Point, but yeah. So one of the things that we like to talk about here, or at least I've been trying to with all the various people since I've had on the show, is just talk about some of the stuff that you did. Like I already know most of this stuff, but this is different.
They don't.
They don't, right? So okay, what year were you, or what time frame were you born in?
1962.
So 62. Okay, so 1972. What did 10-year-old Fred do for fun?
Fun. Wow. I had free access to about a 2-mile valley wide that went for 2 miles to the highway that way, and another 5 to 8 miles behind me. And then there was also was Beaver Mountain, so we had full access to pretty much anywhere we wanted to go. There were several people that had posted signs on their fences, but that was meant to keep people that didn't live in the valley out of their property. I had 2 rules growing up as a kid. Don't cut anybody's fences, and don't mess with the livestock. Everybody had cattle. Our neighbor down the road, just to the east of us, Jim, he and his wife, they had Brahma cattle. And my granddad raised Herefords mostly, without horns, polled Herefords. We had pigs and chickens and.
What about fun? You said
fun?
You said that there was this big valley.
And that valley and all of that, the property, there was no rabbit or squirrel I couldn't shoot. There was no pond that I couldn't fish in. Don't leave any trash. Leave it like you found it. And that was kind of what we did. My dad at one point came up with a little red Honda 50 mini bike. It was the one where you could actually unscrew the handlebars and turn the handlebars down by the front tire, and you could put it in the trunk of your car. And it was a kickstart, single cylinder, and my brother and I rode that thing to death. I didn't know anything about mechanicking. I didn't know anything about maintenance. Mm-hmm. It never got the oil change. It never had the tires aired up. Nothing was ever done to it. We just rode it, put gas in it, and rode it until it quit.
You wrote it till it quit.
Rode it till it quit. We on our property. My dad lived his 20 acres. The little house was right up next to the road, and we had a barn, and a dog pen, and a chicken house, all right, kind of together there. And the cows that we had a trail that went from the barn down through the field to the big pond. And it was about 12 inches wide and about 4 inches deep, because cattle, they find a trail and they walk the trail all the time.
And they're heavy.
And yes, so they're making this trail. And so that was the racetrack for the mini bike. You start up near the house, you go as fast as you can down the trail, around the pond and back as quick as you can. Stay on the trail. And we rode that thing to death. And I love to go fishing. And all of the dogs that were not hound dogs, my dad had walkers, and he called them July dogs, but they were actually foxhounds. And we did this thing called wolf hunting. And we would take the dogs, put them in the back of the truck in the dog box, and there'd be a meeting of 3 or 4 men at different times. And on a Friday night, we would go to the top of Beaver Mountain, and they would turn all the dogs out. And we'd listen to the dogs running through the fields, chasing coyotes. And it was funny because everybody knew their dog and the way it barked. They knew they knew the sound of their dog's bay, is what they called it. And the men were talking about, oh, they got that one's on, that one's in the front. It was hysterical to watch these old guys, listen to these old guys talk. And we'd sit out there for hours on the dog box and the tail of the tailgate of the truck, and just listen to these dogs running all over the mountains and down through the valleys, and you're just listening to these dogs just they're after this coyote like crazy. And eventually the coyote's going to get tired and he'll run to ground. And that could be in a dead tree, or in a hole in the ground, or a den that they've got. And we had one dog, Mott, was a great big, thick-bodied hound, and he was kind of slow, because he couldn't keep up with the little skinny dogs. But when he got there, he would go in and get the coyote and kill it. And many times they'd bring this dead coyote back to the truck. And
here's my trophy.
Here's the trophy.
Here's the trophy.
Here's the trophy. And whichever dog brought the coyote back, that guy got to take the coyote down to his part of the valley, and Dad would tie baling wire on its back feet and hang it on the fence. And there were coyotes hanging all down through the valley through there on the post and the fence.
And I assume that is a deterrent for other coyotes, like if a coyote smelt it or something?
It was predator control. That's what it was. They were actually controlling the coyote population from taking young calves. Their freshborn calves are absolutely defenseless, except for their mama. And they eat a lot of rabbits and quail, and they're predators. They're very opportunistic, and they'll eat whatever they can catch. So it was kind of predator control.
Yeah.
And it was absolutely a hoot. And in the late 60s, early 70s, Dad come up with this little teardrop trailer, aluminum, tiny. It was barely big enough that 2 people could stretch out in long ways. And all 5 of us would pile in there and sleep when we go to these field trials. And the field trial was everybody in the area of the state, southeast Oklahoma, would get together at this old schoolhouse in a little town, empty town called Stidham. And they had field trials. It was a weekend or maybe a week-long thing during the summer, and they had competitions for showing the dogs. You could position the dogs, and Daddy had some really, really high-quality dogs. And so my sister and I'm not sure if my brother got into showing dogs at all, but we would walk these dogs in and hop them up on this box, and there'd be these boxes down through there, and all these people are handling their dogs, and the dogs would stand real proud, their tail sticking up, and you brush their tail a couple of times, and that makes them hold, and they just stand there. And if their feet not exactly where you want them, you put their feet where you want them.
Yeah.
And a good dog will just stand there and head up high, and just, it was absolutely a hoot.
How many dogs do you think that you had in from your
At,
childhood? All
at one point, just the hounds, somewhere between 8 and 10,
wow.
something like that.
Is there one that stuck out? Because like the thing that I always tell the kids and my wife is there was one dog we had a bunch because if you remember I used to live out in the East
Yeah.
Texas for a little bit. Dogs would come and go actually.
Yeah.
But there was one dog that stuck around. Her name was Susie. It's the greatest dog we've ever had.
Yeah.
Frankie, our dog that's here, is coming up the ranks. I don't think she'll ever beat Susie, but
Right.
but like, is there one that stuck out? Susie was a lab chow mix. She
Right.
was black and she had a purple tongue.
Yeah.
So that's to kind of give you an idea. She was
Yeah.
like a perfect mix of a
Right.
lab and a chow.
My dad had a favorite hound. Her name was Minnie, and Minnie was the mother of Sid, and Daddy didn't want Sid to have any puppies, and so he took turpentine and rubbed it on her belly button, and that was supposed to deter her from ever coming in heat, and it worked for
Interesting.
whatever reason. Minnie was an old dog, and she died of old age, and somebody wanted to buy Sid really bad. Maybe it was Minnie. Anyway, Dad was one high-powered dog that several people wanted to buy, and he just wouldn't sell him. He just wouldn't sell her at all. And he came in one day from work and found her dead in the pen. And he was like, "What in the world?" Because I mean, she was not an old dog, but she was a. And so he did he cut her open and he found out what was in her belly. He wanted to find out what the heck happened, and found her stomach was just ripped to shreds from where somebody had fed her glass. So they had a big handful of hamburger meat or whatever, and it was just packed with glass and fed it to that dog, and she died. I remember that. That was a pretty traumatic thing. The whole process of resigning and cutting her open and all that whole thing.
And yeah, you had told me that story before.
Yeah, that was a very memorable. My favorite dog was Moose.
Moose. What kind of dog was it?
Moose was a Catahoula Chow mix. His mama was a real skinny little dog, and she just came up one day, and she was pregnant, and she had the puppies, and she had 8 or 10 puppies. And it was in a dead cold winter, and shortly after the puppies were born, Daddy caught her chasing the neighbor's cows. Well, that's a death sentence.
Yeah.
Immediate death sentence. Puppies or no puppies. So he put her down, and most of the puppies froze to death except for Moose. And we continued raising Moose on a bottle until he got big enough where he could eat. So for 4 or 5 weeks, we bottle fed this pup, and I would crawl in the doghouse with him. And it was just a little bit, I was a tiny kid. I was probably smaller than Dexter at this point. And crawl in there 2 or 3 times a day and feed him a bottle. And he got to be the best dog. He would look like a chow, long hair,
Yeah.
and just a really thick coat. And he was very defensive of my mom. In playing, I would smack her on the knee, and he would just like.
That would be, that has to be a trait of a chow.
Yeah.
Because
Very
like
protective.
Susie would, like my dad would wrestle with us, right?
Yeah.
And Susie would be like putting her snout kind of right up in there.
Yeah.
Basically looking at my dad, even though she recognized him as the alpha.
Right.
Like jeering me. Like she's like, "What are you doing with them?
What are you doing to boys?
What are you doing with
them?
them?"
They're my boys, you know.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I've never experienced that with a dog before.
Yeah.
So the fact that you had a chow mix that did the same
Yeah.
thing was kind of interesting.
After, and Moose, actually Moose got to be an old dog, and when I went to X-ray school, I wanted to take him with me because he was my dog. And Daddy said, "You can't take the dog. That dog's going to live right here forever."
Yeah.
And so that was kind of the rule. And every summer or every spring, Dad would take clippers and shear off or cut his hair all the way down to really, really short, so he looked like a lion. He kept this big giant mane around his shoulders and neck and this little tassel on his tail. And I didn't know this, but Moose was a dog killer. If he got in a fight, the dog he was fighting with is going to die. And Moose wasn't big. He wasn't giant tall. He was, 27, 28 inches at the shoulder. The neighbor up the road had a Doberman one time, and he called Daddy, and he said, "My dog's out here killing your dog. You better get up here and break him up because he's gonna kill your dog. That Doberman's gonna kill him." And Daddy said, "Does he have my dog by the back of the neck, by the back of all his hair?" He said, "Yeah, you gotta get up here." He said, "Well, I'm on my way, but your dog will be dead before I get there." And because his hair was so long and so loose, the Doberman couldn't actually get to his neck.
Right.
He was biting on his hair. And Moose would turn in such a way that he would roll and catch the dog by the neck and just kill it.
Wow.
And so when Daddy got up there, and they were less than a mile away, Daddy hopped in the car, and that Doberman was laying there dead when he got there. And Moose did that a lot. Several dogs would show up, and we fed them and took care of them. But when Moose got tired of them being in the yard, he would take them down to the road and teach them how to chase cars. And they'd get run over. Because Moose didn't chase cars. He would act like he was going to chase cars and get those other dogs to chase the cars, and Moose would just stay out of the way.
Yeah.
And many, many, many dogs that came up in the yard got
Run
exterminated by the traffic on the dirt road.
You think maybe he thought it was funny? Like, hey, follow me real quick.
This is my house, and he could have just taken them out, but he didn't. He taught them how to chase cars. with the exception of Jack. Daddy came up with this little bitty short Staffordshire Terrier pit bull, but Jack was a tiny little dog. He probably weighed 25, 30 pounds, and solid black. And Moose just loved that little dog. And my granddad, Mahan, and my grandma, they needed a dog. And so Daddy said, "Well, you like the dog? You like the black dog?" And he said, "Yeah, I like that little dog." He said, "Well, take him up there and start feeding him. He'll stay with you." And Mahan called him Jungle Dog. So Jack became Jungle Dog, and he lived a long, long time with my granddad and grandma. I don't remember what happened to him, but he was their dog after that, and he just loved us kids, and he was just a great animal to be around. That was during the point where I had finished school. I graduated in 1980, went to X-ray school in 1981 in the summer.
Don't jump ahead of me just yet.
Gone after 1981. Go ahead.
Don't jump ahead of me with your graduation just yet.
Deadlines.
I know you.
Transition points.
We're gonna go from was it hunting and fishing to X-ray school.
Well, the other thing I mentioned, the cows and the hogs and hauling hay and working hard. I learned how to really be able to put in a day's work. And like I said, I was under 5 feet tall until I hit 16 or 17 years old, and I had a little growth spurt, and I made my current height of the giant standing that I am of 5'7", somewhere between 17 and 19. But we always had trucks. I started driving very young.
What age?
Probably 8 or 10 years old.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, and driving in the fields, hauling hay,
tractors,
going to the store, tractors and that kind of thing. Of course, motorcycles and mini bikes. And we lived a mile and a half off the highway, and the little country store that we shopped at was just under a mile up the highway. And so when Mom would say, "I need this, 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 and this, and this from the store," go get it.
Hop in the truck and go.
Hop in the truck.
Wow.
And me and my brother or sister, we'd hop in the truck and we'd go up to Hill's grocery store, or convenience store, actually is what it was. They had a big meat counter with deli meats and cheeses and all that. And it was a feed store and a gas station. So it was a convenience store in the 70s. And
But that was common back then,
It,
though,
it
right?
really
Yeah.
was, especially in that part of the country.
Yeah.
So yeah,
All your friends would just meet up at the general store.
no, we didn't meet anywhere
Right.
except
Well,
in
you know what I
we'd
mean,
yeah,
like,
pick up somebody's
yeah.
house. We're all going to go do something today. Let's meet over at Jimmy's or Ricky's or whatever.
So
Knew everybody in the valley.
yeah.
Knew all the old people. My granddad, he was by every person that would mention his name, he was the best man they'd ever met. Hardworking, raised his siblings. He was the oldest of 9 or 10,
Wow.
and so after his father passed or something, I don't know exactly what. But my granddad raised his siblings. He didn't get married until he was 34 because he was raising kids.
Right.
And when he met my grandma, I'm not sure how sure they met because he lived over here at the end of Eufaula Dam, and she lived over in near Tahlequah. Yeah. Anyway, we hauled hay, square bales. We were bucking bales, loading them on the truck, the long bed Chevy truck. And my brother was actually a somewhat better driver than I was, so I had the dubious job of actually throwing bales of hay up into the truck so they could get stacked up. And you could get 30 bales of hay on a long bed Chevy truck with the tailgate down in 4 layers.
Yeah.
You got the bed and you got 3 above the bed, or just almost up to the cab. And that was a ton. 30 bales is 1 ton. And we got paid, if we're working for somebody else, by the ton. If we're working for ourselves, we're just moving it from the field to the barn. And so I learned how to work hard from a very young age. We worked cows together. Everybody was there when we were castrating calves, or we were vaccinating the cows every once a year.
What do you think was the youngest age that you were when you castrated a cow? I can't even like.
Well, I never did any of the actual
Oh, okay.
cutting, but we were there cutting the calves out because the bull calves had to go over through so they could corral them and
Yeah.
get them subdued so they could actually castrate them. So we were in the pen with the mamas and the bulls and the big calves and other stuff, and we were moving the calves over to where they could get subdued and fixed.
Wow.
And vaccinated. We did everything all at the same time every year, pretty much in the spring or whatnot. And we always had hogs. I was responsible for them pretty young age of making sure the hogs were fed, the chickens were fed, the eggs were gathered, the dogs were fed in the pen. I milked a cow on a regular basis when we got the trailer house in probably 70 or 71, because my grandfather died in 73, and he was there helping Dad tear down the little house. I remember that specifically. My granddad never really spoke a lot, but when he spoke, everybody listened. He was truly the patriarch of the family, and he very soft spoken, but he spoke with authority.
Yeah.
I still miss him. I think about him and riding. He was the first one to let me drive his tractor, sitting on his lap, and I was driving the tractor.
You were big time.
And I was 6, 8, 7 years old, something like that.
You know my dad, so this is probably unbelievable. He had a tractor when we lived out in East Texas.
Yeah.
Didn't ride it much. I mean I didn't, but
Right.
but it's just wild to think that like where we are now versus
Yeah.
the tractor. But so from what I'm understanding of what you're saying is like your fun revolved around agriculture and hunting and fishing and
Hunting,
doing all that.
fishing.
But I'm pop culture, so I have to ask: was there? And forgive me, I don't know the timeline as far as was there a cartoon that you were able to watch back then that was like your favorite?
Saturday morning cartoons.
Dead now.
dead
I
now.
think my generation was the last generation
Yeah.
to experience Saturday morning
Right,
cartoons.
because the cartoons were not on. I mean, we had 3 channels.
Yeah,
We had ABC, NBC, and PBS.
yeah,
And the public broadcasting channel was a hoot. On Saturday night, they had on this show called The Goodies. It was a British comedy, very much like Monty Python became, but it was before Monty Python. One of the guys on The Goodies was actually part of the Monty Python Flying Circus. That was always a hoot.
but as far as like
Like
cartoons,
Looney Tunes are my
like
favorite. Looney
okay,
Tunes are my favorite.
Okay, is there a specific character that's your favorite? Let me go. Can I guess?
Sure.
Okay, Looney Tunes. I'm gonna guess. The easy answer would say, even though I know it's wrong, is Yosemite Sam.
Nope.
But I'm going to venture to say Bugs Bunny.
Nope.
No.
Foghorn Leghorn.
Oh, really? I say.
That's the one. And the one with the small chicken hawk was always a hoot.
Yeah.
And the one chick that had the glasses, I don't remember his name, but anyway, they were the brilliant little baby chick
Yeah.
that was a genius or whatnot.
So was
Always a hoot.
Was Foghorn Leghorn your favorite because it reminded you of
I-
home because
don't-
all of
I can't think it was just his voice, the way he.
yeah. I say you get
yeah.
along in here.
Yeah. Of course, Daffy and Bugs were great. And
Yeah.
Yosemite Sam was also cool. But yeah, the Looney Tunes were probably my favorite.
Yeah.
There was a cartoon show on every afternoon during the week called Uncle Zeb's Cartoon Camp. I think is what it was, and it was out of Tulsa on whatever channel it was, Channel 8, whatever that was back in the day. And because I rode the bus, my brother and sister and I were the first ones on the bus in the morning, and the last ones off the bus
yeah.
in the evening. So
Yeah.
we spent at least an hour on the bus in the morning and an hour on the bus
Yeah.
on the way home. So we always missed Uncle Zeb unless school got out early and we were able to get home in time. Ewell was our bus driver my entire life. He drove that same route from the time until we moved out of town, and he retired at some point. And occasionally he would have this other old fella that would hop on the bus in town and sit up on the front, and the other old guy played a banjo and Ewell played guitar. And so they were going to jam that night, and it was always kind of a big deal because you knew there was going to be music in the valley. Not that we could hear it because we were 2 miles away.
Yeah.
But they got together, and Jimmy, Ewell's son, is also a musician. I have a second cousin that was also a musician, Terry. Terry and Jimmy were best buddies, and so yeah, music, a little bit of music. And the other thing I really enjoyed during that time of my life was going to church.
Yeah.
We went to a little country church there just off the side of the road, and Pastor Rayburn, not the correct pronunciation of his name, but that was what we called him, was an old guy when I was 8 years old. And I remember he preached I wish I remember the scriptures he used, but he preached a true gospel message one Sunday morning, and moved me to move out of my chair and go forward. I was about 8 years old, so this is 1970. Made a profession of faith and got baptized in that little church shortly after that. And Miss Sally was Sunday school teacher for a long time for us little kids, and she also played the piano. And so we had the piano, and everybody had hymnals, and there was another small little songbook. I'm not sure what the name of it was. It was purple or a dark burgundy, and I remember loved sitting in that church and listening to Miss Sally bang on that half-tune piano, and everybody just singing their heart out to God. It was truly, truly an awesome way to grow up. So that was from my earliest memories of going to church.
When we buried my grandma a few years ago,
Yeah.
we buried her out in East Texas, right? So when we were out there, we took the opportunity to drive past or I was actually going to see if the church was open. The old, what was it called? Sulphur Springs Baptist Church
Okay.
out in East Texas, right? And it's like this little tiny church. And when we drove past it, I pulled in the parking lot. It's still, there was like, it was like the building was this big
Yep.
whenever I went there. And then they had like, they added on a little extra. I took
Right.
a picture of it, sent it to my dad. I'm like, they doubled in size. But yeah,
Yeah.
it was this tiny building that they had added on a little bit
Yeah.
to it, and nobody was around, so I couldn't knock on the door
Yeah.
and walk in there because like I had this memory of the way it used to look,
Right.
where like it was this tiny church. You had your row here, your row of pews here, your row of pews here. You had your aisle, and you had your aisles down, and then the baptistry. But the baptistry was like this wallpaper of like I don't know, I can't remember if it was like Adam and Eve or maybe like a wallpaper of
Yeah.
the where Jesus getting baptized. I can't
Yeah.
remember exactly what it was, but I wanted to see if it still had all that stuff in
That's
there.
funny.
But yeah, but
That's funny.
but so the next question I have for you, without getting too much into it, so 1981, you graduate
Yep.
because we got I want
1980. I graduated in
oh
1980.
1980, but I at least wanted to see what you did because we've never actually talked about this on the show as far as exactly what you did for fun or cartoons. So now I'm going to start practicing my Foghorn Leghorn
Yeah.
impressions.
Good luck with that.
I know, right? But so 1980, you graduate.
Yep.
The next year, I'm actually born, but but you graduate in 1980, and you make the decision to go to X-ray school when?
It was actually not a decision until the spring of 1981.
Okay,
In the fall of 1980, after I graduated, I started junior college. I spent the first semester in junior college doing your basics, your
yeah,
English, your literature, speech, or this, that, and the other. And I did horribly. I think I got 6 credits that semester, and I was supposed to have, or may have got 4. I was supposed to get 9. And the next semester, I had to take speech over because at that point I could not force myself to move from my chair to the front of the room to present a talk. I could not talk in front of people
wow,
at all. I was incredibly shy, very much insecure in my humanity.
yeah,
I had no idea who I was. My father, I love my dad, and I'm stoked now that I have a good conversation with him. I have a really good relationship with him as of late. It got really good when I got sober, and in 2003, now that relationship is very much better. But my dad was a child when I was born. He was 18. My mom was 16 when I was born. They didn't know get up from sick 'em about kids,
yeah,
about raising kids. They were still kids themselves. He was not really domineering, but very, very disciplinarian. And this is what you do, and this is how you do it, and this is now when you do it. And there was no explanation. It was simply this is what is expected from you, and if you don't do that, there will be repercussions. And whether he dispensed the belt or mom dispensed the fly swat or the switch or whatever, this is what you do. This is what I expect, and this is what will happen, or you will pay.
right. Cause and effect.
Yeah. So, and I learned to thrive in that. This is what you do. Okay, I'm doing it. I pretty sure I remember the last time my dad spanked me, and it was way before we moved into the trailer, and that was in 1970. And so I was 8, 9 years old, and something like that, or 7, 8 years old, something like that, when I got my last spanking from him that I remember, and just do what he says.
Yeah.
End of story.
So college kind of letting you free roam. It kind of
When I left home, well, when I was in college, I found out there's a student union and we could play pool and you can drink sodas and it was open all day long, all during class, all the time. And so that's where I spent a great portion of my time. I didn't do any studying. I didn't have any discipline as far as my education went. I skated through high school and managed to graduate barely, but I graduated.
Yeah.
That's something.
So college rolls around.
College rolls around. I do
Yeah.
2 semesters, and I realize that I'm not really garnering anything from this. I've already had English and literature and all this other basic stuff in high school, and after or during my second semester, I told them that I was going to stop going to college after this semester. I'm not going to go back, and neither one of them were very happy about it, but they knew they couldn't force me to go. So they opted to let me stop going to college. And I found a job because in my last 2 years in high school, I did welding. I did 2 years of welding, and that welding class was 3 hours a day. You went in either in the morning and you worked until noon, or you went in after lunch and you worked till in school. And spent my time welding and whistling and get things thrown at me and hollered at for making too much noise. And I met a young man there named Ronnie, and Ronnie was pretty cool. Everybody kind of gave him a hard time because, well, there was a divorce and there was a whole bunch of other stuff that happened in his life. He and his brother Steve are really good dudes. And I got a job working for his granddad, Mr. Art. And Ronnie worked there, and it was a welding shop. It was an auto shop. He was trying to make a living in Haskell County, Oklahoma. And
Yeah.
it's a hard place to make a living. So he had this big shop, and we were welding and doing motors and all kind of just general mechanical stuff. And pretty quickly, Art realized that he could not afford to pay all three of us and keep the doors open. And so he had to sit down one day with me and Ronnie over coffee, and he said, "You do a good job. You work hard. I got no complaints about how you work or what you do. You do good stuff. But I can't afford to pay you, my grandson, and keep the doors open. So I've made a phone call to the state of Oklahoma, and they're going to send a man down here to do some research and to find out if I can get the state to pay half of your salary, and I'll pay the other half, and I can keep you on." And they'll call it OJT, on-job training. And I said, okay. So the gentleman came down from the state, and we all sat down another morning over coffee, and he said, "Well, Art, there's not anything that the state can do to support you here, can help you with this, because you're a for-profit company. You're trying to make a living here, and the program, the CETA program, is only suitable for a nonprofit organization." And he said, "So, Fred, I can help you. The program can help you in about 3 places here in town." And he said, "We can get you in the courthouse, several different places, several different things. We can put you in the nursing home, or you can work in the local hospital." And I said, "Okay, I have a couple of things to say." I said, "I don't care about politics, so I don't want to work at the courthouse. That was a mistake. I don't want to work in a nursing home because that's where people go to die. And I don't want to stick anybody with a needle. I'm open to anything else." And he said, "Noted. I'll be in touch." So within a week or so, I got communication. He said, "You need to be at the hospital in the morning at 8 o'clock. You're going to talk to the administrator. Her name is Faye, and we're going to put you to work in the x-ray department." He said, "Wear your best, decent clothes, a button-down shirt, a pair of slacks, not jeans, and a decent pair of shoes." I said, "I can do that." And so I showed up that morning and reported to Miss Faye, and got all the information, paperwork squared away, and she said, "Come down here, let me introduce you to Jack." Jack was a registered lab tech, and he covered X-ray and lab and EKG, and he helped cover part of the respiratory department, respiratory tech, whatever.
So when you got down there, like, what drew you to the X-ray portion of it?
I didn't have any choice in it.
Oh, you just went down there and he's like,
choice is I
X-ray.
don't want to do this, this, or this.
I don't want to stick anybody. I don't want to do anything.
And that built the only thing available, and that was X-ray.
Yeah.
Funny story. Back in my first year in welding, JJ, the boss, the teacher, was also a pastor friend of my dad's. He had a son that was also in the class, and I knew JJ, and anyway, I can't think of his first name. That's tragic. Anyway, and JJ said, "So, where do you see yourself in 5 years after you graduate? Where do you see yourself? What do you see yourself doing in 5 years?" And he went around the room, and everybody was talking, "Well, I'm going to be a professional welder, and this and that and the other." And everybody's going to be a professional welder.
Right.
And he got to me, and I said, "I'm going to be working somewhere in healthcare." And all the guys were like, "Well, what are you doing in here welding shop?" I went, "Dude, I live here in Oklahoma, and everybody needs to know how to weld." And they were like, "Oh, okay." So I had that knowledge, or had that foreknowledge, or prophetic word, or whatever it was, whatever you want to call it, that I would be working somewhere in healthcare. I didn't want to be a nurse. I didn't know anything else about it. My uncle, my dad's youngest brother, is a lab tech, had been a lab tech since he got out of high school. He went straight from high school to MT school, and then he became all of that. And so I knew there was stuff available, but I had done no research. I didn't know anything about X-ray. Get introduced to Jack. Jack says, "Come down here, let me show you how this thing works." I said, "Okay." Miss Fay went back to her office. Here's the machine. It was a picker X-ray machine, completely manual controlled. You had to set every knob and every dial and everything to what you wanted it to do. You told the machine what to do. There was no computer aided. There was no exposure control. Everything was manual. And you set the technique, and that's what your picture's going to look like.
It took up the entire room, right?
No, actually, the console of the machine was about 2.5, maybe 3 feet wide.
Yeah.
But it was just taller than me, so it was about 5.5, 10 feet tall, 5 feet 10 inches tall, and it had this giant panel on the front, and it had a giant knob here and a giant knob here and a big knob here and push buttons here and all of this other stuff. And she said, "This is the MA, or this is the milliamps. This is the time. This determines how long the exposure will be. All these buttons." And he said, "This is the kV over here. This is the line voltage, and it has to be in this little green area in order for the machine to function appropriately." I said, "Every morning when you come in, turn the machine on, make sure that the line voltage is in the area. If it's not, you can go up or you can go down." And when you turn that line voltage, it was like clunk, clunk. And he said, and this chart, and it was a big, like, poster board size chart. This is the mass, or this is the MA, that's this knob. These buttons across, this is the time. So when you take MA times time, you get mass, MAS. That's the exposure for the X-ray. He said, "This is how you do a hand. This is how you do a wrist. This is how you do a forearm. This is how you do a shoulder."
And this is all day one.
20 minutes
20
in.
minutes.
20 minutes in.
Excuse me, sir. Can I write this down real quick?
Nope.
No, you just
No
like
notes. Just listen. And So he went through that and he showed me how to do a chest x-ray, showed me how to do an abdomen, knees, legs, ankles, and feet. That pretty much covered everything.
Yeah.
And he mentioned spine and how to do all of that. And he said, right up there on top of that shelf, there are 3 giant books, and they're literally giant. He said, that is the X-ray Bible. If you want to know why and what and how, look at those. It'll tell you step by step how to position a patient, where to put the film, where to angle the thing, how to make the pictures look like it looks in the book. If you do what it says, that's what your pictures are going to look like. Cool. He said, processor's in here. Don't open that. That's where the film are. If you open that, you're going to fog all the film. You have to throw it all away. That's expensive. And the processor, you turn it on, it needs 10 to 15 minutes to warm up before you start putting film in it because the chemicals have to come up to temperature. And he said, if you need me, I'll be down in the lab. If the front needs an x-ray, they'll call you. If the nurses need an x-ray, they'll call you.
So day one.
Day one.
Day one, they're
Day one.
to the wolves.
To the wolves. He said, that was on Monday. He said, tomorrow the radiologist will be here and we're going to do an upper GI, lower GI, 3 gallbladders, and whatever else we had to do. And he said, when they get here, I'll be here. We'll get this all done. You'll figure it all out, and you'll be set to go. And I said, okay. So I pulled those books out of the shelf and sitting there waiting on the phone to ring. And I was just flipping through, looking at stuff. And sure enough, it said, you angle this way, you put the film here, angle it here, you do this, that, and the other. And that's what your picture's going to look like. So I knew what they were supposed to look like because it had a human being on the table with everything lined up and all of that. And then it had a picture, an image of the radiograph, what it was supposed to look like. So I knew how to do everything because the book showed me how to do everything.
First patient, they're sitting there. Do you take the book, kind of
Nope.
lay it on their chest, and then look at the hand? Oh, it's positioned right.
I did a lot of chest x-rays.
Repetition helps.
Repetition helps.
Yeah.
I did a lot of chest x-rays. I did a lot of shoulders, extremities, and abdomens.
And this is all before you went
This
to
was right out of a shop.
Yeah. So, like, you did this how long before you went to X-ray school?
Maybe 4 months.
Yeah, because this is what they say, because you said 1980 and then you went to X-ray school in 81.
X-ray school, started X-ray school July 1st, 1981. So this was all spring 1981. And 2 weeks in, Jack was supposed to be on call that weekend, that Saturday and Sunday. And he said, you want to take call this weekend? I went, sure, what'd I do? He said, take the pager home, make sure it's on, make sure the batteries are charged. And he said, if it goes off, call the ER, and they'll tell you what they need. And I said, I can do that. So that first Saturday, we had the local bar, dance club it's called Vans. And it was not uncommon for fights to break out.
It's a bar, right?
It's a bar, yeah. And it's a bar in hillbilly southeast Oklahoma, okay?
In the 80s, when there wasn't anything to do to the fight.
In the 80s. So I'm sitting at the house, goofing off, doing nothing. The pager goes off. So I called the ER. I said, hey, this is Fred. I'm on call tonight. What you got? We have a jaw. He's been in a fight, and Doc wants a jaw. I said, I'm on the way. And I lived probably 10 miles away. Part of it was in the country. So there's a dirt road. And
so you could gun it.
I hopped in my brother's little hot rod Dodge Dart, hit the emergency flashers, and flew to town. Like 8 minutes, 7 minutes, something like that. I was flying. And I come in the ER door, and I said, I'm here. I'm going to go turn everything on. And the nurse said, wait a minute. Where do you live? Don't you live out at Webster's over there by Whitefield? And I said, yeah. She said, how fast? I said, I don't care how fast you were driving. You can't do that. She went off on me.
Like, lady,
She
I'm
said,
trying to go turn machine. Leave me
you
alone.
you know that the ambulance with lights and sirens is only allowed to drive 65 miles an hour with people dying in the back. I know for a fact how long it takes to get here from Whitefield because I live over just across the bridge on the other side. So if you have a wreck, Jack's going to have to x-ray you. Don't ever drive that fast, ever again. If they stop you, they'll write you a ticket and possibly take you to jail. They do not care why you're coming here that fast. Don't do that.
And you said,
No.
lady.
I said, yes, ma'am. And she said, now go turn your stuff on. And I know now she wasn't mad, but she knew I was being stupid.
Right.
And I didn't know any better. And so she educated me there violently. And I understood that because that's kind of how I was programmed. Somebody tells you what to do, how to do it. Okay.
But you still,
Got it.
But you still speed. Allegedly.
I'm a grown man.
Allegedly.
I'm a grown man
Allegedly,
now. I pay my own tickets now.
You're like, I'm on my way. I'm 40 minutes up.
I drive the speed limit in Texas, which is 10 miles an hour over the posted speed on the interstate.
That's true.
In town, I drive the speed limit and I set my cruise control because I have a heavy foot. Set my cruise. I don't break the laws in any town. I know how to not get a ticket.
You know, I've gotten a ticket in my Prius, so
Yeah,
I was
20
going,
over,
I
right?
was going 80, 81 and a 65 on the freeway. He's like, where are you going? I'm like, driving, dude. Driving. In a Prius.
Here's your ticket. Slow down.
He probably still tells his cop friends about that. Remember that time I put over that Prius? Why was he going so fast?
He's in a hurry.
But
yeah.
So 1981, you go to X-ray school, and this is kind of where.
Well, wait, there's a story here that it needs to be shared.
Okay.
Okay. So I get to the ER that night. I run down to the processor. I turn it on, so I know I've got 10 or 15 minutes before it's ready to go. So I grab that book. The jaw is the crookedest bone in your body because it has a curve here and a curve here and a curve down here to the point. And Jack never mentioned a jaw, but I know it's connected to the head, so it's in the book where the head is.
Yeah.
And so I pull the book out, I flop it down on the X-ray table, and I know I've got a few minutes, so I got to figure out what am I going to do here and how am I going to get these pictures, and what pictures am I going to do because there was no protocol for a mandible. So I flip open to it and I find the picture, and it shows the picture of this part of the mandible. I said, okay, so I'll do that one, and then I'll do this one because that shows the straight shot of the mandible, and I'll do two of these because that shows the side. So in an X-ray, you're supposed to do at least two pictures 90 degrees from each other. So there's one, and the other one you have to turn it 90 degrees. So it's flat here and it's on the side here. So it's an AP and a lateral. So I had an understanding about that, and so I picked the ones I'm going to do, and I set the book back over behind the control panel. And we got the guy, and he was not belligerently drunk, but he had gotten into a little tiff out in the bar, and somebody boxed him in the face. And so I get him down to X-ray, and I say, look, I've never done this X-ray before, but I'd really like to try it myself. If not, I can call Jack, and he's just right up the street. He can be here in 5 minutes. But I'd really like to try this myself first, if you don't care. And he said, knock yourself out. Knock yourself out. And so I took the four pictures that I was going to. The first two looked exactly like the book because I followed step by step. The last two, the laterals, were a little bit dark, so you couldn't really see all of the bone. So I said, I need to do two of those over, and I made an adjustment on my technique. I turned it down a little bit, and he said, go ahead. So I shot those last two films and looked at them, and they were it looked exactly like the book. And so I took him back, and I said, call the doc. I've got the films hanging down here in the processing room. And they said, okay. I said, I'm going to stay until he gets here in case he wants something else. And so I'm back in X-ray cleaning up and putting my books up and all that. And I hear Dr. Tom coming down the hallway in his cowboy boots because everybody had cattle back in the day.
Yeah.
So he's coming down the hallway in his cowboy boots. And I come out of X-ray and I meet him just 2 or 3 steps from where I'm at. I said, I've got him hanging in here, Doc. He never said a word. And I stepped into the processing room, which is It's the size of a small closet. It's smaller than your kid's bathroom. It's got a processor anyway. So I step in out of the way and got the films hanging up there, and they're labeled and marked and right and left, and everything is. It was on point. And he looked at those, and he grunted, and he snorted, and he made some noises, and he looked at me, and he looked at the pictures. Who took these films? I said, I did, sir. As he turned to walk out the door, he glanced at me and he said, nice films. Nice films.
Nice.
That was the first time in my life that I ever remember anybody telling me I did a good job. Ever. Anybody. Ever. And I said in that moment, as he's walking away, I want to do this the rest of my life. Because somebody appreciated the time that I invested in this guy's x-rays, and it was good.
Yeah.
And I talked to Jack the next Monday, and I said, I want to go to x-ray school. He said, well, my brother's an ER doctor down in Fort Smith. I can help get you in. He was blowing smoke. Anyway, so very shortly, so this was May or June, beginning of May, I think, Mom and I went to Fort Smith. We went to Sparks Hospital and talked to the x-ray guy, the guy who was over the x-ray school. And he said, we stopped taking applications on Friday. Let me make a phone call. So he called the other hospital in town, which was St. Edward's. It was a Catholic hospital, a very cool, very good hospital. He called and he talked to the boss over there, and he said, are y'all still taking applications for x-ray school? And they said, yeah, today's the last day. Last day possible. He said, okay, thanks. I'm going to send a guy to you right now. So he said, go to St. Edward's, talk to this guy, fill out the application. You can't wait till tomorrow. Today is the last day to put in an application. And so we bolted over there and got the requirements for the dress code and everything that went with it, and filled out the application and submitted it. And it was kind of an interview thing at that moment with that whole process. And they asked why, and I said, well, I've been working in my county hospital doing x-rays since earlier this spring, and I really enjoy it. I'm good at it, and I like it. I want to know why and how this thing works. I want to know more about it. I'm going to do this for a long, long time. And they said, okay. And I don't know if he put a star on it, or I don't know if he made a check on it or whatnot, but within a week, maybe two, I got notification I'd been accepted. And school started on July 1st, and I needed to have all of this stuff bring money on day one. You have to pay your tuition for 2 years, and you have to buy all your books on day one.
Wow.
And you have to have your dress code is this, and you have to have all this stuff together. And it cost me $700 to go to x-ray school for 2 years, 24 months, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, from July 1 of 1981 to June 30th, 1983.
Definitely not $700 now.
No, you can't even buy your books for that much now.
Right, exactly.
But I had this stack of books, which included a brand new set of Merrill's, which is the Bible, the X-ray Bible. Had everything I needed for 2 years of school, and started that next day, or that day, in school. And I've been doing it ever since. I graduated near the bottom of my class because I didn't invest like I should have. Had I invested a tenth of my potential, I would have been top of the class, and I would have retired from that hospital, because the top student in the class was offered a job in that hospital. The girl who got the offer, her name was Susan. I don't think she took the job, but I went back to my hometown and started being a registered x-ray tech in 1983. And been doing it pretty much ever since.
But during the time in school, if I remember correctly, and that's kind of where I think you want to go down and we want to talk about, right? During the X-ray school is where you got the freedom.
I took a left turn.
You took a left turn
Yeah.
from the church-going boy from a small town to now being open to all of
Exposed.
there you go, exposed,
Exposed to the
bubble,
world.
the bubble
To
was
the
burst.
world.
Yeah. So it's one of
Yeah.
those things where like people are saying that when you give your kid a phone, you're not giving your kid access to the world. You're giving the world access to your kid.
Right.
You go to X-ray school, the world gets access to
Right.
you, and you know I've met you. You know, I think let's just round up and say 10 years ago, so I know like your story when it comes to that. But like, there's a one specific guy that you mentioned that you know his name. I can't remember it off the top, but like the one guy you said they introduced you to how to chase women.
Catch women.
Catch women.
Not chase women. Catch women.
Catch women. So like, so that's like the downfall of so many guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, story is like you have this trajectory and then you get sidelined.
Yeah.
By not necessarily women, but there's all kinds of things
Yeah.
that could sideline us.
Yeah.
So without getting, you know, of course, too crazy with the story. So you meet this guy, he teaches you how to catch women, and then like the next step is what?
Well, when I first went to Fort Smith, I went to my mom's cousin, and he gave me my very first own Bible. It was a Ryrie Study Bible, New King James Translation, hardback, with the red emblem in the middle of it. Great Bible. I wish I still had it. I don't know where it's at. And I started going to church, the First Baptist Church in Fort Smith. Got involved in evangelism explosion from Dr. G. James Kennedy, and started knocking on doors. I went through the process. I had all the script and all the other stuff, and that worked for a good while. I moved from the house. I drove back and forth from home to school for a while, and I got in the car one morning and started the car and remember pulling out of the driveway, and then I woke up in like 40 minutes in the parking lot of the church, or of the hospital, and I don't remember any other part of the drive. And I went through 4 small towns to get there, and I was driving way too fast. The speed limit was 55 back in the day, so a 50-mile drive is going to take you an hour.
Yeah.
I don't know how I got there, and it scared me. And
It's because you were tired?
I was asleep
Oh.
at the wheel.
But your brain was like,
My brain was
Yeah.
driving, but
Yeah.
I was completely disconnected from the travel. It was autopilot or whatever, God's hand, or I don't know. And then I found Herb, one of my classmates. He had an extra room on the back porch of his house that I could rent. I brought my twin bed, and I brought chests to put my socks and underwear and stuff in, and I had a place where I could hang my clothes. And I did that for several months, and then Herb was married, had a wife and a kid, and that got to be too much for them. So he asked me. He said, "I can't do this, Fred. It's too much with there's
stuff.
I need you to find another
Yeah.
place to live." He said, "You're a good dude, but it's the family, and I understand that. You got to take care of your family." And so I found a little dumpy efficiency apartment, and it was one big room, had a kitchen, toilet, and one big living room. That's all it was. And so I moved in over there and bumped into a few folks over there that were partying, and I was first handed the joint there. And I remember the first time I smoked, I was paralyzed. They said, "How you doing over there?" I said, "I'm doing okay, except I can't move anything but my eyeballs."
What year was that?
That was early 1981.
Okay, so almost right off the bat.
That
yeah.
was within the first 3, maybe 4 months of X-ray school, and that's when whiskey came about and other stuff. I was very adventurous back in those days. I didn't have a good moral compass because my father controlled everything that I did, everything I thought. There was
Right. That's where I was saying, like, you got
Yeah.
the freedom. So the
Yeah,
freedom.
I got the freedom, and nobody was telling me no, and I didn't live under my dad's roof anymore, so nothing was illegal now. Nothing
Right.
was off the board. And so I kind of jumped off in with both feet. I had a sexual encounter with my girlfriend back in high school. I was a senior, so I was 18 years old, and I told my mom about it after the fact, and she cried. She said, you know what happens when you do that with girls, right? And she said, you know that I was a child when I got pregnant with you, and
16.
15 when
Oh,
she got
yeah,
pregnant,
yeah.
yeah. And I said, yeah. She said, don't do that anymore, because if you're not using protection, and condoms were, I mean, they were available, but they weren't a big thing. The safe sex era hadn't come in yet. This was early 80s.
Yeah.
And, or late 70s, 79, I think. And so my girlfriend and I, we didn't do that anymore. It was a one-time thing. And I got to Fort Smith, and there was lots of other opportunities. And I jumped off into the sexual adventure of Fred with both feet.
Yeah.
There was nothing that was off the table. I got involved with homosexuality, bisexuality, lots more women, and a whole bunch of other nonsense that went that way, because I didn't have a moral compass. I'd never had anybody say, boy, you need to read this book so you can honor God.
Right.
Nobody said that.
Aaron Ask America, we're talking real life. Truth, love, and struggle, no filters, no hype. From the heart of the people to the soul of the land, he's asking the questions you'll understand. Aaron Ask America.